Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday we began, and this morning we're going to continue text 29, 10, 11, Canto 11, Chapter 9, text 29. And in the course of reading the commentaries and other references to this verse, you'll start to pick up on the Sanskrit. In many cases, there's something like, I didn't count, 12, 15 classes where Prabhupada quotes this verse. It's an important verse, and sometimes the Sanskrit. So hearing the Sanskrit again and again helps familiarize yourself with the message. It's very similar, the message is very similar to Prahlad's teachings to his classmates. The human form of life is rarely achieved, and although it's temporary, it can provide the greatest benefit. That's Prahlad's teaching, it's the same here. Labdhava sudurlabham idam bahu sambhavante. Those of you that like to hear Prabhupada's classes, you're familiar with that phrase. Labdva sudurlabham idam bahu sambhavante. Next line. Manusham artadam anityam apiha giraha. So here we go. Translation. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. Now, there's some rare exceptions, but so we read commentaries. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's gloss of Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary. Although this body is temporary, it awards eternal benefit. Therefore, one should try to attain supreme auspiciousness as long as the body is functioning properly. One should know for certain that the body is born, then it dies, then again one accepts another birth, which are all temporary. Sense enjoyment, which is available in the human form of life, is also available for hogs, dogs, and horses. And Vishwanath, the human body is temporary, but full of value, since by the human body one can attain what is eternal. One should thus endeavor for the highest benefit as long as the body lives, because the body is temporary. After being born, it dies. Material enjoyment, vishaya, is possible in all bodies, such as dogs. Now, tomorrow there's going to be an initiation ceremony, and Srila Prabhupada refers to this verse in an initiation ceremony. The date is May 21st, 1969. The initiation is the initiation of Lokanath Das. I don't know if it's the same as our Lokanath Swami, maybe a second Lokanath. Here's Prabhupada's, the translation of his class. Manusham artadam anityam apiha dhiraha turnam yatete anumritya pateta yavat nikshayasyaya vishaya kalu sarvata syat. The Vedic literature informs us that labdhava sudurlabham idam. Idam means this. This means this body, this opportunity, human form of life, developed consciousness, full facility. The animals, they have no facility. They are living in the jungles. But we can utilize these jungles, these forests, for so many comfortable situations. We have got developed consciousness, intelligence we can utilize. So it is called Artha Dham. Artha. There are two meanings of Artha. Artha, Shastra. Artha, Shastra means economics, how to increase wealth. That is called Artha. So Artha Dham, this human form of life can bestow upon you Artha. Artha means something substantial. Generally, we understand substantial means money. If somebody gets money, that is substantial for material comforts, of course, but real substantial thing is Krishna consciousness. That is real substance. Artadam. Paragraph. So, Vedic literature, Vedas, meaning, when it is said Artadam, quote, in this life you can achieve the substance. That substance means Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, taking it, substance means multimillionaire or millions of dollars. That is also Artha, but anityam. That is anityam. That substance will not be carried by you. You have come here empty-handed from the womb of your mother, and when you leave this place, you will go empty-handed. Not that because you have earned millions of dollars, Mr. Rockefeller or Ford, you can carry this. No. The Rockefeller Center will remain there where it is. You have to go empty-handed. So now, when it is said Artadam, quote, you can achieve the substance, that does not mean this Artha, temporary, which will not be carried by me. It will be left behind. So we're going to read some other ones so we get a sense of how Prabhupada engaged with this verse and helped to illuminate and guide his followers to understand what the Avadhuta Brahmana is saying, what Krishna is saying to Uddhava, what the Bhagavatam is saying to us. So this is a reference to this verse. There's next two are directly in purports, Prabhupada's purports to the Bhagavatam. This verse is referenced in 429.53. 429.53 is the Narada speaking to King Prachini Bari. My dear king, please search out that deer who is engaged in eating grass in a very nice flower garden, along with his wife. That deer is very much attached to his business, and he is enjoying the sweet singing of the bumblebees in his garden. Just try to understand his position. He is unaware that before him is a tiger, which is accustomed to living at the cost of another's flesh. Behind the deer is a hunter who is threatening to pierce him with sharp arrows. Thus the deer's death is imminent. Prabhupada's purport. Here is an allegory in which the king is advised to find a deer that is always in a dangerous position. Although threatened from all sides, the deer simply eats grass in a nice flower garden, unaware of the danger all around him. All living entities, especially human beings, think themselves very happy in the midst of families, as if living in a flower garden and hearing the sweet humming of bumblebees. Everyone is centered around his wife, who is the beauty of family life. The bumblebee's humming may be compared to the talk of children. The human being, just like the deer, enjoys his family without knowing that before him is the time factor, which is represented by the tiger. The fruitive activities of the living entity simply create another dangerous position and oblige him to accept different types of bodies. For a deer to run after a mirage of water in the desert is not unusual. The deer is also very fond of sex. The conclusion is that one who lives like a deer will be killed in due course of time. Vedic literatures therefore advise us that we should understand our constitutional position and take to devotional service before death comes, according to Bhagavatam, this verse, text 29 from this chapter. After many births, we have attained this human form. Therefore, before death comes, we should engage ourselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. That is the fulfillment of human life. Now, just a little appreciation. It's not like, oh, I never heard that before. It's expressed in Canto 4, it's expressed in Canto 7, it's expressed in Canto 11, it's expressed in many places. The way in which, the context in which it's expressed is varied. It's a Purana, it's history. But the history is to illuminate tattva, truths. So it's little, maybe for some people, a little hard just to read the Upanishads, what to speak of Vedanta Sutra. But those are explained nicely in the Puranic literature. The embedded within the story is the tattva, the message that one should be receiving. So here's the message. You get the human form of life. It's rarely achieved, although it's temporary. Temporary means in some unknown period of time it's going to be taken. So best to use it, because although it's temporary, you can achieve something eternal. And the other forms of life cannot. Same points. And the capacity of the human form of life to enjoy the senses is available in the lower form. So meaning that which distinguishes human from animal is this higher activity. Go for it. Here's Prabhupada being quoted in The Matchless Gift. The Matchless Gift is one of those BBT publications where they draw from lectures and put them together in some sequence and give it a title. So this is The Matchless Gift. The title of this section is The Universal Teacher. And the universal teacher is the Avadhuta Brahman. From the Gita we learn that even after the destruction of the body, the Atma, or the soul, is not destroyed. He is always the same, always new and fresh. Fire cannot burn him, water cannot dissolve him, air cannot dry him up, and the sword cannot kill him. He is everlasting and eternal, and this is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1084, 13, celebrated verse. Yasyatma bhuti kunape tridatuke swadi kalatradashu boma ijadi yat tirtha bhuti salile nakarhachij janeshu abigeshu saeva gokra. We all know that verse because we hear it a lot. Quote, anyone who accepts this bodily bag of three elements, bile, mucus, and air, as his self, who has affinity for an intimate relationship with his wife and children, who considers his land as worshipable, who takes bath in the waters of the holy places of pilgrimage but never takes advantage of those persons who are in actual knowledge, is no better than an ass or a cow. Paragraph. Unfortunately, these days we have all been turned foolish by neglecting our real comfort and identifying the material cage with ourselves. We have concentrated all our energies for the meaningless upkeep of the material cage for its own sake, completely neglecting the captive soul within. The cage is meant for the undoing of the bird, semicolon. The bird is not meant for the welfare of the cage. Let us therefore deeply ponder this. All our activities are now turned toward the upkeep of the cage. And the most we do is to try to give some food to the mind by art and literature. But we do not know that this mind is also material in a more subtle form. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayu, etc. Earth, water, fire, air, sky, etc. We have scarcely tried to give any food to the soul, which is distinct from the body and mind. Therefore, we are committing suicide in the proper sense of the term. The message of the Acharya Dev is to give us a warning to halt such wrong activities. Let us therefore bow down at his lotus feet for the unalloyed mercy and kindness he has bestowed upon us. Paragraph. Gentlemen, we do not for a moment think that my Gurudev wants to put a complete break on the modern civilization, an impossible feat, but let us learn from him the art of making the best use of a bad bargain, and let us understand the importance of this human life, which is fit for the highest development of true consciousness. The best use of this rare human form of life should not be neglected, as stated in Bhagavatam. Now here's our verse. Text 19 of chapter 9. It's 29. Human life is obtained after many, many births, and though it is temporary, it offers the highest benefits. Thus, a sober and intelligent man should immediately try to fulfill his mission and attain the highest profit of life before another death occurs. He should avoid sense gratification, which is available in all circumstances. Paragraph. Let us not misuse this human life in the vain pursuit of material enjoyment, or, in other words, for the sake of only eating, sleeping, fearing, and sensuous activities. The Acharya Dev's message is conveyed in the words of Rupa Goswami, and he gives this anasaktasya vishayan, and then prapanchakataya bhujya, artificial or incomplete detachment and complete detachment. And he gives the translation. You all know, so I'm not going to read it. Well, read the translation. One is said to be situated in the fully renounced order of life if he lives in accordance with Krishna consciousness. He should be without attachment for sense gratification and should accept only what is necessary for the upkeep of the body. On the other hand, one who renounces things which could be used in the service of Krishna under the pretext that such things are material does not practice complete renunciation. Paragraph. The purport of these slokas can only be realized by fully developing the rational portion of our life, not the animal portion. Sitting at the feet of Acharya Dev, let us try to understand from this transcendental source of knowledge what we are, what is this universe, what is God, and what is our relationship with Him. The message of Lord Chaitanya is the message for the living entities and the message of the living world. Lord Chaitanya did not bother himself with the upliftment of the dead world, which is suitably named Marcha Loka, the world where everything is destined to die. He appeared before us 450 years ago to tell us something of the transcendental universe where everything is permanent and everything is for the service of the Absolute. But recently, Lord Chaitanya has been misrepresented by some unscrupulous persons, and the highest philosophy of the Lord has been misinterpreted to be the cult of the lowest type of society. We're glad to announce that tonight our Acharya Dev, with his unusual kindness, saved us from this horrible type of degradation, and therefore we bow down at his lotus feet with all humility. Now that's beautiful, huh? I don't know where it's taken from, but it sounds like the essay, the Vyasa Puja address essay. And there's one more. This is 1966, Prabhupada referring with the Sanskrit to this verse, text 29. So new audience, completely different audience, but it's a prominent message. That is clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita, That one who has understood what is Krishna, how Krishna takes his birth, how Krishna acts, what are his activities, for one who has understood factually, the result is, simply by understanding Krishna, the result is Chakvadeham Purnarjanma Naiti. He doesn't get any more material birth. Then, where does he go? Chakvadeham Purnarjanma Naiti, Mameti. He comes to me. That means, in the supreme abode of Krishna, that is the highest perfection. But if the highest perfection is, then it's cut off. Therefore, we should be very serious. Why should we wait for another birth, either in a very pious family or rich family, or in another planet? That is also condemned in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuvanal Loka Purnar Avartanurjuna. Even if you are elevated to the highest planet of this material world, you'll have to come again to prepare yourself. The best thing is that we are now here in this planet and we immediately take to Krishna consciousness and surrender unto him and become perfect. Why should you wait for another birth in another planet? Finish. Now, if you are actually serious about Krishna consciousness, then finish now. This is the opportunity. Labdva sadurlabhamidam bahu sambhavante. Recognize? That's this verse. This birth is obtained after many, many evolutionary process. Manusham artadam. This human body can give you the highest perfection. So, turnam yateta. By being very serious, try for that perfection. Anu mrityam patet yavat. Until next death comes. But we are not serious. We're not very serious. We are serious about how to make our sense gratification very nicely. That is our seriousness. Human advancement of civilization means how nicely you can gratify your senses. This is going on. Only to give all sorts of comfort to this body. But actually, human civilization is meant that people should be very serious to have perfection of this human body, spiritual perfection. That is perfect human civilization. That is missing at the present moment. So just I'll give some thought about whether we go into this some more on Monday. But, read some more of how Prabhupada uses this verse to, amplify his message. It's his message is Lord Chaitanya's message is the Bhagavatam's message. It's not his message, but it's his message. It's his message and his mission to deliver the message. And on the gratitude end, as this apparently this essay on, I think it's in a Vyasa Puja essay to Bhakti Siddhanta, he is bowing at the feet because he's recognizing the gift of this knowledge, which he's now repeating. And subjectively, I don't know if any of you were as surprised as I was to hear Prabhupada on several occasions, although he's speaking this message so strongly, saying it was very difficult to take sannyas. If it's difficult for Prabhupada to take sannyas, then what about the rest of us folks? Those who are householders and living with wife and children and the attachments that are there. But he did. The point was, as strong as the message is, the grip that material attachment has on us is very strong. It's his life is an exhibition of that fact. So, at least subjectively, whether he was just saying that to encourage us, or in fact it was difficult for him. But he said Bhakti Siddhanta appeared to him several times and instructed him. And his godbrother Keshava Maharaj similarly instructed him. You must. So we must You may not get it in your dream, your spiritual master telling you at a certain stage of your life, take sannyas. You may, but it's the teaching is there nonetheless, and it's whether take sannyas or fulfill the sannyas like life of absolute dedication without attachment. That's meant for cultivation in the course of life in any case. But the verse is human form of life. While you have it, it's temporary, but it can give the greatest benefit. And that's Prabhupada's message. My thoughts are going to the impersonalist idea of detachment and renunciation, and that's not our teaching. It's not our practice. It's recognizing stuff, the temporary, to be in relation to the source of the temporary, and to engage with that which is the source, from the source, in relation to the source. And so it may connect with our material affinity, wanting to be the enjoyers of. But spiritual detachment means to see those things and engage those things properly. There's risk either way. The risk of engaging those things in service to Krishna is we have not just the Krishna pocket, we have the sense enjoyment pocket, and something goes in both pockets. That's the risk. Then there's the other risk, as you just push it away and the mind is still contemplating the object. That's the other risk. So it's a treacherous place. Pick your risk. And if you're going to pick this side or that side, make sure you have the principle in place that's being expressed here. There's a mission, human life mission, special arrangement by the Creator. That was the previous verse. He wasn't happy with the other forms of life. He was happy with the human form of life because it can fulfill that mission. So make the Lord happy. Do what He wants. And be successful. And be happy. So just boil it down, chant to be happy. And then comes I'm chanting, but I'm not happy. Must be I'm not chanting properly. Not that there's something wrong with the name, it's something wrong with my approach. So then the whole picture of how we conduct our lives in devotion to Krishna in relation to stuff, in relation to our relationship with the Supreme, taking shelter. I'm looking forward to speaking about attaining sadhu sangha, because that's going to help us go from the stuck to the higher position. So let's see if there's some discussion here. Anyone would like to? Shyam Sundar in the back.
Hare Krishna.
Shri Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai.
So Maharaj, when we talk about the material attachments, my Guru Maharaj, he mentioned in a simple term that money is honey. So to become detached, the simple barometer is how much that we are accumulating for our own enjoyment, or we are detaching from that and giving and using for the service of Krishna. Is it a proper way of measuring the detachment? Because as a grahastha life, I can see that if you can reduce your needs in a monetary way, it definitely helps to detach. But I just want to hear from you on that side.
I'm detecting one of your favorite messages to the household community, and that's be charitable, folks. He's our Sham Sundar is well known for encouraging householders in that regard. From his Guru Maharaj and all the instructions he's heard and examples set and so forth. So your question is it the measure of one's advancement, or one of the measures is the degree to which we're reducing our monetary requirements and dedicating that balanced surplus to service to Krishna. At least for the detachment part. Well, several things. Here's one. Something that I liked from early days of hearing. What Krishna is not looking for is what you're giving. He's looking for what you're holding back. I have seen, not universally, but some persons who have little, they're more generous than those that have a lot. Now, why that is, one can, have different explanations. But if Krishna has the principle of spiritual advancement is not, it's not how much, but how much one is giving, but how much one is the attachment to what one has. The attachment on your specific question on the category of detachment, the attachment to being the enjoyer. Of course, one can be the enjoyer of, I know when I give a donation, I'm going to get back. Someone was sharing that with me in a home program, very honestly, in the assembly of a few people. I recognize this as a contamination. What's that? As I give charity, my contemplation is I'm going to get back. Now, one will get back if one gives charity, so many times, depending upon variables. But if that's the purpose, then it contaminates or pollutes the consciousness. So charity is a principle, but it's not just charity for the purpose of detachment. It's the bhakti principle. So another thought on your comment. Check it out. One of the principal, throughout scriptures, one of the principal descriptions of the duty of a householder is charity. And there's so many ways of describing that principal duty. So charity means detachment, means This is a resource that's God's resource given to me to manage, and I'm meant to manage it in such a way that His part and parcel of it, others are benefiting. And then it's not just my family members, but others. And then you can expand the circle in various ways. And what's the lifestyle? Again, on this point of detachment, the lifestyle where Krishna is at the center. I mean, in New York, people go to the park and they feed the pigeons. Or they go to a park and they feed the ducks. And they're happy. The pigeons go mad, and they're really happy to see the pigeons happy. But then that's on the material happiness. And so my point is the charity and the detachment part needs to be Krishnaized, and there's ways to do that. Because the real purpose of the charity and detachment is the obstacle of attachment, to get on the other side of the obstacle. It's the whole same thing that this whole 3 chapters, 7, 8, 9 of Uddhava Gita are doing. The purpose of that detachment is to get on the other side of the obstacle of material attachment, so that one can know Krishna. That was Uddhava's question. So my response is, it needs to be spiritualized. That simplification and so forth. It's to be encouraged for sure. Yes. For the sake of detachment. Yes. And that it reaches the purpose that Krishna is at the center. Yes. So how is Krishna pleased if you're living more simply? Because your attention, if you're Krishna conscious, your attention is going more to Him and less to stuff. Necessities, but reducing necessities and more in terms of offering to Krishna, whatever. Or Krishnas. Okay, so anyone else? Sarva in the front. He is going to speak slowly and clearly so I can understand everything.
There's a name of God, Prananath, like Lord Chaitanya refers to the Lord as the Lord of Prana.
Yes.
It seems like we should want Krishna more than life itself or prana. Can you comment on that?
You just did a nice job. It fits in completely with the whole topic. There's things gross and there's things subtle and there's things more subtle than subtle. And air of life is super subtle. And then there's the Lord of the air of life. And so attachment to the temporary, even attachment to the air of life, it's also temporary. Life is not dependent upon the air of life. Air of life is dependent upon life. So where does our dependency go? First is to recognize we're dependent. Most people think otherwise, live their life otherwise. So I'm just embellishing what you already put very nicely. Anyone else?
Not related to today's discussion, but yesterday we were fasting from Ekadashi, and today we have only few minutes to break the fast.
Really?
So is it so important to break the fast in certain period of time?
Well, I didn't know that there was, I hope I got the right 2 minutes.
We have only 20 minutes from 6:33 to 6:53. That's what his calendar says.
Oh, I missed it.
I was just curious, Maharaj.
Well, technically, yes. And supposing one, yes, it's important to get the full benefit of fasting for Ekadasi. One breaks the Ekadasi at the proper time. So yes, it is important. How important? Well, our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada didn't emphasize the fastidious specific times. So it's the spirit more than the technicality. That's my faith goes there. Now, supposing you have that spirit, but you missed the technicality, what's the result? Well, technically, you don't get the full benefit, but spiritually, you get the full benefit. And then supposing somebody follows all the technicality, but there isn't the right purpose behind it, do they get the full benefit? No. So which is more important, the spiritual or the technicality? It's important. The technicality is important, but it's not the essence.
Yes, Maharaj, you were reading the description that how, we were compared to the deer in the garden. And
Yes, yes.
You compare the tiger to time. Maybe I got distracted. What was hunter compared to? Or was it?
The fruitive activities of a living entity simply create another dangerous position. The results of our fruitive activities. The tiger in the form of time, or the time in the form of the tiger, and the fruitive activities in the form of hunter.
Maharaj, just on the follow-up of the point that one has to keep Krishna in the center. But sometimes one may act like, okay, I'm keeping Krishna as in center, and so I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of myself, and I have to, because we are all being Krishna in the center. So where do you draw the line, or where do you make that discretion? I mean,
Well, you do have to do all those things for Krishna. You'd be a irresponsible citizen to not do those things. But that doing those things is not the totality of. Why don't you come back here by your computer and do online? That's not the totality of duty. One should do those duties, and one should have there are other duties that are part of responsibilities of life, each to their capacity and according to their nature, but there are other duties. I'm reminded of Vishal, Prabhupada disciple Vishal. He not so long ago departed this world, But he was one of his, along with his great affection for Prabhupada, one of his noted characteristics was whenever he was asked to do some service, he'd smile, a big smile, and say, "I have to chant my rounds, Prabhu." And then he'd engage in conversation all day long, and someone would ask him to do some service, and he'd smile and say, "I have to chant my rounds, Prabhu." No, Prabhupada loved him, and he loved Prabhupada. But one morning walk, this is just anecdotal in response to your question. Prabhupada going out from his quarters, out the front gate, 6 o'clock in the morning, turning right, kirtan along the way. Vishal is right there, right on the street, full dandavats in front of Prabhupada, so he couldn't move. And he kind of chubby body, and big smile, stood up. Prabhupada looked at him and said, "Vishal, do something practical." Okay, online.
We have two questions from Uddhava Bhakta Prabhu.
Uttam Bhakta, 2 questions.
First question. Most cultures don't speak about karma and the human form of life exclusively. What is the best way to communicate this message to them without violating their faith limits?
Well, it depends. I mean, the best way depends. And one of the ways is common sense, and another way is something that's familiar with them. You connect it with something that's familiar with them. But here in Texas, there's lots of Christians, so you connect it with a Christian idea: as you sow, so you shall reap. Then other people, they can understand, at least conceptually. So you're not introducing a new or persuading them to give up what they have and take something else. It's just supporting. Try to do it like that. Support common sense and what's already familiar with them. Next.
His second question. In one of your lectures, you quoted Bhaktivinoda Thakur's 3 types of anarthas: Asat Trishna, Vaishnav Aparad, and Hridaya Dorbalya, weakness of heart. How does Lord Krishna view our weaknesses of heart, and what is the best way to deal with it?
How does Krishna view weakness of heart and the best way to deal with it? Well, Krishna is all-knowing, and so he's speaking to Arjuna because Arjuna has that one, weakness of heart. So how does Krishna want to correct, and what do? You read Bhagavad Gita so you can overcome weakness of heart. That's a simple answer. And then you find those that are free from that particular source of anartha and keep their close association. It'll help you overcome your weakness of heart. Sadhu Sangha.
Question from Snehavali Devidasi. I am curious to know regarding the verse.
You hear what?
I am curious to know regarding the verse, Canto 10, Chapter 84, Text 13, ending with Gokara. Whenever I read that verse, I always wondered why the metaphor of cow is given in the verse. Why not monkey or deer, which suits more?
Maybe the number of syllables to make the Sanskrit work out, I don't know.
Is there a particular reason?
One might say, even those who are in the mode of goodness, animals in the mode of goodness are still animals. That's another. Monkeys aren't in the mode of goodness. You have to ask Vyasadeva why he chose it. That's some ideas. Next? That's it. Anyone else? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.